Formula One lovers. We are here to talk strategy and answer your questions about your fantasy lineups ahead of the Brazil GP. I don't know about you guys, but for me, Brazil was always one of those races that kind of reminds me the end of the season is near. We're towards the end of the calendar. Not sure what it is about this event, but it has been home to some of the most dramatic end of season events in history. Lonzo took both of his titles here in 2005 and 6. Hamilton famously upset Massa and Ferrari in 2008 on the last lap. I think we all remember the scene of Ferrari high-fiving and jumping in the pit, and then realizing with about half of the last lap to go that they shouldn't be exciting or shouldn't be celebrating. Um, and although we are definitely not going to see a victory locked in this weekend, Max cannot lock in the championship, even with a win and a Lando DNF this weekend. Nonetheless, we are in for a great weekend of racing, and it's a sprint week. So we have a lot to talk about today. Before we get going, some quick introductions. My name is Ross, founder and CEO of GridRival. With me today, I have Ryan Booth, our director of business operations. You see that? I did that a little backwards for you, Michael. I got Michael Ursinoli, our CTO, and William Laddie, our principal software engineer. Before we get going, just a reminder, like and subscribe to our channel if you have not, so that you never miss out one of these shows, and get your questions in early. And with the volume of questions we are starting to get, I think it's important to just kind of give a quick reminder of what will help us. If you want specific team lineup, we need to know who on your team is locked out, who can you not sign, how many positions you have open, who is currently on the team. So we want to know all of those things to give us the best chance of giving you feedback. And we're probably going to try and avoid questions where you're asking us to fill out an entire lineup, or if you have 4 or 5 empty spots. I think we're going to give enough information out in the rest of the show that you'll be able to figure out some of those things on your own. So start getting your questions in early, and we will get to them as soon as we get through a little bit of Mexico Mexico GP recap. We had on that event 10 drivers go up in value, 8 drop. Leclerc and Hulkenberg stayed flat. On the winning side, you had Carlos Sainz, Magnussen, and Pierre Gasly up 2 million. Lance Stroller Coaster up 1.4. We told you guys last weekend he had been down, 5 or 6 races in the row. He was at the bottom of the roller coaster. Now, how high he goes after this, hard to say, but he went up 1.4 million in Mexico. Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas both up 1.2, and then you have Juan Zhou, Ocon, Colapinto, and Lando all up under 1 million. On the losing side, Tsunoda, Alonso, and Perez. Not very great luck in his hometown the last 2 seasons there, unfortunately. Perez now, for the first time, I think, since being in a Red Bull, is in talent driver territory. So we'll have that as a discussion point today as well. Albon down 1.8, Piastri down 1.5 after a very rough qualifying. Did manage to drive through the field all the way back up to P8. Liam Lawson, not exactly the race that we had hoped for Liam. I think Liam still has quite a bit of upside. Again, a discussion point here in a moment. Down 0.7, and then you had Verstappen, who accumulated 20 seconds in penalties. Maybe a little bit of retribution for the McLaren team after what happened in the United States Grand Prix. So, and then Russell down 0.3. So, on the team side, not a ton of movement. Teams can go up or down a maximum of 3 million. None moved more. Let's see, on the worst side, you had RB dropped 2.1. And the rest of them were up or down, somewhere about 1 million or less. So lots to talk about on today's show. I think we should probably start off by just discussing the title fight really quickly. What are Lando's odds, do you guys think, of taking this from Max Verstappen? Basically, he needs to gap Max by an average of 12 points per weekend. Now, 2 sprint weekends to go. That's not an impossibility, but any DNF by Lando now, between now and the end of the season, would be incredibly punitive to the degree where it would all but probably guarantee Max a victory, assuming Max, continues to perform, in the podium position. So Let's start off with your guys' thoughts there. What do we think is going to happen? What's your predictions for end of season? Start by giving me a percent likelihood that you think Lando Norris can take this championship.
49%.
Very strong. I feel like that might be a high.
No,
you think it's a coin flip?
50. Yeah, 49-51. It's 51%. Max is 49%. Norris's.
We'll connect after the show. I would love to make a bet with you.
Yes, I would also like to book that bet because I have a very different number.
What is your number, William?
I'm going to say 5% chance.
Ryan, if you were setting the lines, Ryan, what would you be setting the line at? Spread.
I don't know. I think out in market right now he's like 3 to 4 to 1. I think even that I probably can't get behind. I think it's higher than a 5% chance. I think if you gave me 5 to 1 odds, I would probably be interested. But I still think Lando just doesn't have any room for error here. I think it's Max's title fight to win. But yeah, I would love to hear. Yeah, I would love to hear Mike talk about 50%.
49%. It's
49. Okay, 49.
Yeah, I want to hear Mike's justification first, and then I'll go into why I have him at 5%.
Now, Mike, before you say this, some information you should know. For Lando to win, I think we really need to see one Max DNF.
That's what I'm banking
something
on.
of that effect.
Yeah.
Max has not. Out of the last 69 races, Max has had one race where he has not finished. So he's been extremely consistent in finishing. So
and wasn't that an engine failure?
Australia this year.
Yeah, it was in Australia this year. The previous one was all the way back in Australia in 2022. In between the race after Australia 2022, he's only had one DNF. And I don't think it was. I can't recall exactly the start of the season. I don't think it was driver error related.
It was brakes.
Yeah.
That's right.
His brakes caught on fire. Yes.
Yep.
So this all hinges on a Max DNF, which I don't know what race you guys were watching, but Mexico, Max was in, I would say, truly rare form in terms of how aggressive and how wild he was and how many close calls there already were with contact with other cars, risky moves, him fighting when he didn't, in fighting in turns he didn't need to fight in because he could have gotten the pass later. So that's not something you normally see from Max because, all of last season he was 20, 30, 40 seconds ahead of the field, but this season he's very much fighting. And I think when he fights really hard, really aggressive, and there's just chances for collisions and risky takes and things like that. So I think we're at the highest potential point for a legitimate Max DNF crash. So if Max has a DNF crash and Lando keeps it together, I think this becomes a close race.
I guess that's fair, but if he crashes into somebody, there's like a 50% chance it's Lando. He just takes him out too.
So a prediction that I randomly made on Twitter yesterday is that they come into Abu Dhabi really close. Max is slightly ahead. And then we have an Australia 1994 scenario where Max Verstappen plays the part of Michael Schumacher running into Damon Hill and securing himself the championship. So I'll tell you why I've got Lando at 5%. If Lando won every race the rest of the year, Max could finish third every race of the rest of the year, and he's still good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty big uphill battle. I don't see Lando winning every race because I think Ferrari is the fastest car on the grid at the moment.
Yeah, well, and Lando's only won, I believe, 3 races this season compared to Max's 7.
Right, and even Ferrari has more wins than Lando.
Michael's just trying to shake things up a little bit.
He's trying to stir the pot.
Yeah, I get you.
I would bet on a greater likelihood of Max purposefully crashing into Lando to ensure that he doesn't win the championship way more than I would Lando actually winning the championship.
Yeah. And so the thing is, not only is Ferrari fast, Lando has never gained a position on a start this year.
Has he really?
He's lost positions on a start. He hasn't gained positions. He hasn't been able to defend pole.
Yeah.
So I don't see Lando taking care of business. I do think there's an excellent chance that Max takes care of business. And meanwhile, Ferrari is going to be nipping on McLaren's heels in the constructor standings at the rate things are going. I called it like 6 months ago on this very show that Checo was going to cost Red Bull the constructors. So now he's cost them second.
Yep.
I never thought Red Bull would be third, but here we are, 4 races to go. Red Bull is third.
Well, we're through Mexico now, so they can safely drop him without, death threats and all the sort of rumors that everybody heard.
Yeah.
And maybe they could bring in Pato Award from Indy. That would be hot.
See how McLaren feels about that. I don't know that McLaren's going to give him over to the rival.
Probably not. But
I think
I
think you're going to see
they might do it.
I think you're going to see a lot of IndyCar drivers try and get out of that series with potentially Logan coming in, and like they know they can't compete with him, so they're going to want to try and find rides in other series.
Yeah, probably. I can see that happening for sure. On to a real conversation. Undervalued drivers. We had some. I mean, last week was a switch up. Like I said, I believe first time ever that we have seen Perez talent driver eligible since he's been at Red Bull, if I am not mistaken.
Yep.
And not only that, in 9th place, Nico Hulkenberg is now in 8th place in our standings on GridRival, 17.5 million. Below him are Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso at 15.7. So let's start here. Are you guys adding either of those two to your teams, or would you recommend adding either of them to your team? Or do you think Perez is still in a downward spiral, still not undervalued at 16.9, and same with Alonso? Do you think that those are drivers to avoid at this point?
So I've done the math.
Did like you did on the championship?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't trust your math at all.
I did the math with you. You fact checked my math.
Well, I don't trust it anymore now.
I've had so many people. Well, I don't know how many Discord people here. I've had so many people try and fact check my math. I've won every argument so far. I don't think I've lost a math argument this season. All right, so here's the math. Perez is at 16.9. So if he finishes on the app in fantasy rank of 8th, he is no longer talent driver eligible. He'll go up in value. The $1.1 million he needs to be able to then be priced out. So both Hulkenberg and Perez are kind of competing in that same price bracket where they are possibly only talent driver eligible for one race. So if either of them have a good race for Brazil, they will not be in talent driver contention. So the pro tip that I would say is you don't want to be married to either two of these on contract length right now, because you're most likely going to pay a drop fee have to go down to an Alonso or a Magnussen or someone else, Lawson, Colapinto, for your talent driver. So if you're running 4 top drivers in your 5th spot, you're considering Hulkenberg or Perez, Brazil could be the last race that you do that. I am considering that move. So I'm considering a 1 race contract for both for either Hulkenberg or Perez. I have the funds for either. But I'll leave who to pick to the crew. But I'm just saying the math checks out. This is a short contract length.
Under no circumstances am I taking Perez. He is so first of all, we're 4 races to go in the season, and we should be generating as many points as we can at this point, since there's not time to leverage any value you're going to gain. Perez has been in a downward spiral for some time now, and I think he basically knows he's a dead man walking on the team. And I think these are his last 3 races in F1 or last 4 races in F1. I'm not touching him. He's not going to score teammate points. Red Bull is at best the 3rd fastest car at this point. They might even be the 4th fastest, and Verstappen's just that good that he's able to beat Mercedes still. So the car stinks, the driver stinks, and I'm not touching Checo. Alonso, I could consider taking if practice times look good. It was a mechanical retirement last week that did him in. The other consideration, if you've been looking at the weather, Sao Paulo does have a chance of rain all weekend. And I like that experienced hand in a wet situation. I believe it was last year he almost won Monaco. Like if they would have had the tire strategy right, he probably wins Monaco in that Aston Martin. So
I think
yeah,
also,
I
yeah, go ahead.
and you get 2 races of talent for Alonso at least 2 races because he's at 15.7.
Rain and Interlagos, I think, would play very well to Max Verstappen's favor. I mean, I think everybody remembers that race. I think it was 2016 where he overtook like 13 cars. I mean, historically, has done very well in wet environments. Okay, so onto another topic. Colapinto and Lawson were the two drivers that we talked about quite a bit last weekend in terms of value plays. Colapinto's now at 12.5. Lawson did not have a great event. Probably did not, I think most would agree, did not perform up to capability. Colapinto's now at 12.5 million. Lawson's at 9.8. How do you feel about the upsides of both of those? Is Colapinto close to a ceiling for the remainder of the season? If you are a player that's still trying to get extract some value, which of those two would you be, banking on if you're maybe trying to sign up a 1 or 2 racer to get some upside out of?
I don't want either of them. I'm going to keep riding the Yuki Tsunoda train. He's cheaper than both of them. I think he will. I will say right now, Yuki Tsunoda will finish better in Brazil than both Lawson and Colapinto. And I did use Yuki as talent driver in Mexico, which did not turn out super well, if we're being honest.
It didn't turn out well very quickly.
Yeah, at least it was over right away. It was a really rough Sunday for me, but I'm glad that the Tsunoda thing just was like lap 1, like death, versus like I had to wait till the very last lap to lose Blaney, and then my football team lost on a Hail Mary. So that all happened in the course of like an hour. It was a great day. So thank you, Tsunoda, for just getting it over very quickly. But yeah, we're going back to the Tsunoda well. Like I'm all in on Tsunoda this weekend.
All right, so back to the question though.
I don't want Lawson or Colapinto.
But help our viewers. Help our viewers. If our viewers are deciding between those two, who are clearly probably the most undervalued, or at least were last weekend.
Give me Colapinto.
Okay,
slightly.
All right.
I think Colapinto has a better car. I do think that he's approaching his plateau as far as the value increase. If for some reason you're still trying to make that the extra 2 million in budget, Lawson's your better bet there. But in terms of points, I like Colapinto a bit better. I think the Williams is better than the RB.
Mike, were you going to say something?
No, William handled it for me. I'll let it there. We've already amassed quite a bit of questions.
Let's get to him in 1 sec. First, let's talk about any drivers that you or constructors that you would plan or anticipate dropping if you have them on your lineup. Sounds like Perez.
If I had Perez, I'd be done with Perez.
Okay. What if you had Verstappen? Still believe in him?
I think he'll roughly perform to the level he's at now.
Okay.
Like he could be about 3rd or 4th, and sometimes they'll show up and win. Yeah, it's like,
I like it.
I don't think Max is going to implode though.
Very unlikely.
I don't have a drop, but I have a potential add that's a hot take.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so we're coming into the sprint cycle again. So something to consider for your sprint strategy is leveraging drivers more than constructors, because the drivers will earn those extra sprint points. We're at the last few races of the season. So if you're competing against the person in front of you, or you're playing defense from the person behind you, points are what matters the most right now. So did the math. There's a play here. Sauber. So if you run Sauber for 6.4 million, you will lose $400,000. I'm going to tell you that right now. You're going to lose $400,000. If they're the bottom ranked constructor, which they are and will be, it was a fluke that they were not this time. You're going to lose $400,000. But you could run Sauber for 6.6 to $6.4 million, depending on how you factor in the loss, for something like 85 to 90 points. There's no other play in the game right now that for that little amount of money, you get that amount of points. So I would say for anyone who's looking to run the highest stacked driver list possible, there's minimum downside running Sauber as your constructor in the context of the game, right? I'm not talking about the context of, is Sauber a good team or not? It's 6 million. You're going to lose $400,000. You're going to spend $6 million. And as long as they both finish the race, you're going to get 85 to 95 points. That's not bad.
I actually don't dislike that. And the reality is if you're signing long enough contracts, the loss you'll take won't ever actually be realized if they don't get released.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the 400,000 max? Is that a max? You're saying if that's all you'll lose if they finish last every race, or you're just talking just Interlagos?
So if they finish last in Interlagos, they'll lose 400K. If they finish last in Vegas, they'll lose a not 400K, but probably a little bit less than that. It's somewhere between 3 and 400K. So if you but you can stack them for 2 or 3 races right now and run a full stack driver lineup with your total budget. Of course, this doesn't apply to people who have more budget, who you can get Williams or anyone above Sauber who is going to score more points. But the price difference between Sauber and Williams is almost double, and you don't get almost double the points. So
the other intriguing thing about Sauber for this weekend in particular, there is the chance of a wet race, and they could snag some positions as other drivers beach themselves. In fact, last year it was dry and there was a good old fashioned turn one pileup. And there would have been a bunch of cars out of the race if you weren't allowed to fix your car under a red flag, which is what ended up happening that day. So, yeah, there is upside there. Like if they could just keep the car on the track and other people don't keep their car on the track, you could overperform in terms of points.
Should we get to some questions?
Let's do it.
Chris Wynn wanted to be first, but I'm not sure I understand the way his question is worded. He says, Perez, Alonso, and Racing Bulls versus Russell, Sauber, and any driver. I see what I think. Yes, yep. I think I see what he's saying. So downwards bar Lawson.
Yeah, meaning he's locked out of Lawson. So no Lawson, but anyone below 13.2. So
Perez, Alonso, and RB versus Russell, Sauber. I mean, that's
I'd rather have Russell and Sauber.
I agree for the reason Michael just talked
Russell,
about.
Sauber, and then your driver under 13 million. Like you could, you got a lot of choices. Colapinto, Albon, Tsunoda, any of them.
You could roll the dice on Gasly too. If you're looking to have zero account balance left, you're maximizing every dollar you have. Gasly is 13.2. I do not think he's worth that. I think, but I'm just saying you have that. There is an option there. I would probably run Colapinto at 12.5 with Sauber and Russell, and I would feel good about that.
As a noted Alpine hater, I would not recommend Gasly. Definitely not Ocon. That's even more reason to not recommend him. I feel like I'll go Albon or Tsunoda.
What's this? Ismail says, "What's a good pick for 24 million? I have one open spot." I think that we need a little bit more information. Depends on who else is on your team.
I mean, Hamilton.
Probably Hamilton's the best,
Hamilton.
Right? Oh yeah, we have a pretty big gap under 24. So
beyond that, like you could actually, like depending on the rest of your lineup, you could consider, and Ismail has Norris, Russell, Colapinto, and Lawson. So some pretty solid driver choices there. Don't know your constructor, but I'm thinking you could consider making a change to where you could move up the grid as far as your driver choice, because there are a lot better choices than Russell. Like I'd almost rather, dumping Russell doesn't get you a lot though. Like depending on your constructor, maybe that's somewhere where you could downgrade constructor, and then instead of Hamilton, you can get somebody like a Max or a Sainz, like somebody who's capable of winning races, which that's not Russell right now.
You could drop Russell, swap for Piastri, drop Lawson, swap for Tsunoda. That probably works. You could pay the drop fee on Russell, eat that up by dropping Sonoda and taking the dropping Lawson, taking the price difference and picking up Piastri. I would feel a little bit better about that lineup.
Yeah, of all the drivers that are expensive and good, I think Russell's probably the guy I want least, all things considered. I would rather just have Hamilton, or I would rather pay more for everybody else above Russell.
Grayson Holter, I've got Hulkenberg. Ferrari locked out. Hulken Ferrari, no goes. He's got 48.56. Mike, you got the calculator running?
Let me do it.
48.56 million. And he has Norris, Verstappen, Lawson, Sonoda on his team. So he has to fill one constructor spot and one driver spot. He's thinking Leclerc and Williams.
I think he's right.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can give any better advice.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you're good, Grayson. We're gonna move on.
Wait.
Okay, good. Let's hear it.
Can you afford to run Haas?
You tell us.
Yeah,
the calculator.
He had what? I lost this thing. He had 48.56. So he's 48.56. He needs to sign Leclerc at 29.8. That gives him 18.76 left. I would take Haas at 17.6 over Williams.
Now, the one thing you got to consider is your value ratio on Haas is much worse. Haas has averaged 112 points the last 8 race. Williams has averaged what?
I don't care about that.
Well,
I only want to pay for points right now at this part of the season.
Well, I agree.
He's got the money.
I get it. I get it. But you are not Grayson. We don't know what Grayson wants. Grayson might still be trying to make some value plays. And when those other contracts release, it may give him more option to have the additional $5 million in the bank. My point is, the gap between Williams and Haas is what, 6 million for an extra average of 11 points. Yes. So it's an expensive proposition. If my recommendation would be, if you have any of those higher priced drivers, Norris, Verstappen, Lawson, Sonoda, Lawson, Sonoda, especially Sonoda, like if he's going to be dropping off, that means if he drops off after the next race, you're going to be left with, let's just say he stays flat, you'll be left with 8 million plus the 6 that you save by not going all the way up to Haas. And it'll give you just more options at the next event. So that's probably what I would do. I just don't see there's not a ton of value in points going all the way up to Haas. Aston is actually has a better value ratio. It's averaged 114 points and they're 15.2 versus Haas is 17.6. Now, if you're going with Michael's strategy and you are going to lock in whatever these drivers are probably for the rest of the season, I might disagree, because I do think at this point, I don't know. When I look at the performances of the last couple races, I think that Williams is way underpriced relative to Haas. They just haven't had, I don't think they've had a weekend where they've both had a standout performance. And I think because Kevin Magnussen has started to show up, Haas is in a little bit of a different situation. So that's my take. I don't know if you guys have any other opinions than Michael or I.
I think if you can afford it, run Haas.
There you go.
Yeah, just be mindful of when your contracts are expiring. Make sure that you are always positioned to go big as far as your final few driver constructor choices.
All right, Fabio, available budget 34,074. Got that, Michael?
Yep.
34,074. 2 empty spots. He's got Norris, Verstappen, Sainz, and Williams currently signed. He's locked out of Sonoda and Hamilton. Norris, Verstappen, Sainz. I like that. Williams, I like that. So he's got 34. He's got to fill 2 drivers.
Yeah, he's not in a good. Well, he's not in a good.
He needs a talent too.
Yeah, he needs a talent driver. So I would go. Who are you going? I mean,
well, he can't afford Leclerc. He's priced out of the blue chip drivers. So he basically needs 2 Here his three drivers currently are his blue chip drivers. He needs 2 spots to fill up from the midfield. So, best available talent driver selections, you're looking at somewhere in the area between 16 and 17 and a half million on
It
that
depends
third.
on who you
that-
believe in. Like
Yeah,
you could
well,
go like Alonso Magnuson,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
or you could go like Alonso and whichever Williams driver you have faith in.
I think
Like
I'd
if
probably
you
go
want to
Alonso
overpay, like you
Colapinto.
could go Hulk if you want to potentially risk overpaying, but he's going to potentially
I
get
think
pushed
Hulk's
above
at
18 million at some point.
He could do
Yeah, I mean,
Hulk Alonso.
Yeah, like you have your choice of all of your talent eligible drivers.
Yep. I retract my previous statement. You're not in a bad
Yeah.
spot. If you could run Hulk Alonso with the rest of your lineup, and I think you're doing pretty good. Then if
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I thought you were done. I was going to say Perez talent driver. I know everyone else here hates Perez, but I think I'm going to be using Perez as talent driver.
Whoa. Let's be clear here. Nobody hates Sergio
Well,
Perez.
not hates Perez.
Checo
Sergio
Sergio
Perez
Perez I
is-
just don't think he's a very good driver.
There
He's
you
an
go.
institution.
Hates
he's-
rostering Perez. That's how I'll say it. I'm probably using Perez as my talent driver this week, which is it
I think
feels
that you
weird
should
to
do
say
that,
out
Ron.
loud.
Ron, I think that's really good for you. I like that for you.
I need to make some moves.
All right, Jack Westbrook. He's got Norris for 1 race, Alonso for 1 race, Colapinto for 1 race, and Lawson for 3. He's got a lot dropping off next week. Norris, Alonso, Colapinto, all dropping off. After Brazil, he's got 35.4 million, Mike. You got that?
Yeah.
To work with Piastri and Kick on lock. So he can't go with your strategy. He's thinking Hamilton and Williams. 34.
How about like Max or Signs and Sauber?
Yeah.
I like that.
I
he's
like
is
I
it-
like
locked?
Max.
He's locked out of Sauber. He's locked out of Sauber.
Oh darn, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, Plan
So-
B.
Plan B. Plan B, 34. His thoughts are Hamilton and William. What does that drop him down to? So he's got 34. Hamilton takes off 24 of that. So that leaves him with what, 11?
That leaves him with
4?
100K left. I think that leaves him with 100K left.
Oh no,
If
he's
you
like
take
he can
Hamilton
go
Williams.
Lawson and below essentially. Oh, sorry, Ocon and below. He has 11.4 left after signing Hamilton.
Okay. So yeah, he can't. Yeah, I mean Williams is 11.3. I think actually I think those are his best plays. Because let's who else would you sign above Williams? You got RB at 11.4. I don't think that's. I mean, they're almost identical in average race average points. Alpine at 11.8. They're lower than William in average. Then you go up to Aston at 15.2, and then I don't know. I think that with sprint races coming up, I think that's probably the best play. I think the question would be, how long does he sign those for? If I was him, I'd probably be locking in William or Hamilton just for the rest of the season.
My Williams contract is going to be 1 race, and then I'm going to go Sauber.
Yeah, same.
Um,
And then you're gonna have a ton of freedom. We'll be here for you next week when you have all those open spots to figure out.
and then I'd even consider just 1 race for Hamilton and hope he does well, and then take that money and then upgrade.
Okay.
I'm doing 1 quick math here. I have one idea
It's-
for him.
Like I
Do a
see
math.
Hamilton at about like 6th, 7th place on pace.
While you're doing a math, I'm going to answer Michelle Dillo's question. I've never released a contract driver. Can you tell me if I get the current value of that driver minus the release fee? That is exactly what happens. And it'll
That
show you the
release
release fee. If you're on the My Team screen and you tap on any driver, you'll see a drop down. It'll show you the release fee there. You can also tap the release button on the driver selection panel. It'll give you a prompt. Michael, do you have your math ready?
Yeah, it might just be 100K short, but Jack, double check my math here because I'm obviously doing this on the fly. If you drop Lawson, pay the drop fee, pick up Sonoda, and then do the math to see if you can get Piastri instead of Hamilton. So you could have Hamilton, you could have Piastri Sonoda instead of Hamilton and
Piastri was
Lawson.
locked.
Piastri was locked.
Yeah.
Sad.
Sad. Okay, sorry. I tried, man. Doing my best here.
Yeah, and that release fee is 3% of the current value, and as Ross said, you can get that in the app.
Let's see. Christine Lyon. She needs one driver and one team. Has Norris, Sainz, Piastri, and Lawson. I like that. Locked out of Colapinto and Williams. So definitely she got constructor. So I'd say team, let's go kick, which 31.88 minus 6.4, Michael.
25.48.
So she could pick up just
Hamilton.
Yeah, Hamilton's the only choice, really. I like that though.
Yeah.
I mean, Norris, Sainz, and Piastri and Lawson is a great lineup. Add Hamilton to that. I think that's a great spot to be in. Michelle Dillo. I have contracts for Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen, and Sainz, and I have 18.5 to spend with Sonoda and Kick locked. Kick locked, man. I never thought I'd be saying that. It's going to unfortunate to be locked out of Kick, but I think a lot of people are probably using your strategy already and just ran out. Okay, leaves me with Bottas, Talent Driver, and Williams. She's got 18.5 to sign a driver.
No, we're not going to do that. We're going to drop a driver.
I think we're pivoting away from Bottas Talent Driver. Would be the first order of business.
Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen, and Sainz.
Yeah, who do you drop there?
Yeah, I don't know that I want to drop one of those guys and have two talent drivers. Like, honestly, I think what I do is, as she said, Williams, and I just suck it up with Bottas 1 week.
Yeah, I agree.
And then I just pretend that I'm doing a rain dance. I'm hoping that Bottas keeps his car on the track and other people don't keep their car on the track. Like, you could accidentally have yourself a really good weekend if.
Well, Valtteri's actually. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Valtteri fairly decent in the rain?
Oh, it's also in this car.
He's okay.
Maybe in a real.
He's the one I
car.
trust the most. But it doesn't matter how fast your car is if the track's wet enough. I mean,
correct.
Like, I remember the one time Jordan won a race at Brazil because it was sufficiently wet.
Eddie Jordan. Okay. Moving on. Not moving on.
We can move on, but it was Michelle, right? I would do the math personally on it's all about points right now. Do the math on Bottas Talent Driver versus the points you would lose by dropping Leclerc, and see if you could make an estimate of what two Talent Driver eligible drivers would make. Because Talent Drivers double points. So if you ran Hulkenberg, like, you're missing out on like 40 points on that one driver selection between Bottas and Hulkenberg. If you're able to run Hulkenberg as a Talent Driver and then take someone else, that might offset the Leclerc points you're losing. So if I was in your situation, I would have Excel open. And I'd be running some scenarios.
So in your scenario, Mike, you're dropping Leclerc if you're dropping somebody, because I might consider dropping somebody else.
So I'm thinking about Leclerc for math's sake, so basically Leclerc is going to give me the most amount of money back, because his amount minus his drop fee is still going to be more. So that's going to give me the most to play with. So if I can't make a better lineup to beat that I think could beat Leclerc, then it's not going to work with any other cheaper driver, or it less likely to work with any of the cheaper drivers. So I would start the thought exercise with dropping Leclerc, keeping Norris, Verstappen, and Sainz. Verstappen's why? Who'd you drop Verstappen?
I would actually consider Sainz as well as Verstappen as far as my drops. If we find out Max is taking an engine penalty, then I definitely drop Max. For those of you who didn't see, Max pretty much said the other day they're going to have to take a penalty at some point this year. And there's been speculation that they're going to do it at Brazil and they would lose 5 grid spots. And supposedly they would decide by Thursday. Obviously, nothing's ever guaranteed. But if they're going to take a penalty and you decide you're going to drop somebody, then I would say Max, just because he's losing those 5 starting spots. And you don't get overtakes for grid penalties. You can't get overtake points for those penalty spots. So there's no fantasy angle to that. then I think as far as Max's engine goes, just as an aside, I think if they can get through Brazil, then they're saying they can get through Vegas as well, because a street course is not where you want to take a grid trap. Track position is just too important.
Yeah, for sure.
That also adds the angle of, like, is that engine gonna just conk out because they got ambitious with keeping their engine?
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, not enough to be a fantasy consideration, but yeah. So I would look at all the possibilities if you are going to drop a driver, but my vote would be to just suck it up and have Bottas for a week and Williams for a week.
That is the strategy I would take, given the information we have now. I think you got to consider contract lengths. When you're considering dropping, looking at how much you've made on some of these drivers that you're considering drivers, a lot more kind of minor nuance, but I think generally speaking, I agree with William on this one as well. Let's see. Dakota Lee, 56 million available, Mike. Needs 2 drivers and 1 constructor. Colapinto, Alonso, Ferrari on lockdown. That's not bad. Russell 1 race, Albon 3, Max 4. Russell, Albon, Max. Up 300 points in first place. That's good. Okay, 50. What did I say? 56.
56 needs 2 drivers and a constructor.
She's got Max. I'm definitely gonna bring some exposure to McLaren onto this lineup.
Yeah, give me Norris. Like, Norris has been a lot better than Piastri.
I agree.
He's certainly pricier, but he's more expensive.
So let's go Norris and Kick. Right? What does that leave us with, Michael?
I went wild on my math already. Like, you guys are doing your
that's
thing.
35 that's used up. That's 35 that's used up. So that would be 21 million left for 1 more driver. And then I'd say whichever talent eligible driver you're most comfortable with.
Okay, so let's think of what would we need to do to get Dakota Lee into Hamilton. What do we have? What do we have left after signing Kick and McLaren? You said 21.
Sauber and Norris would be 21 million left.
No, 29. Right?
20.
He has 56 million. Kick is 6.4.
Okay.
Right? I mean, so he's 56 minus 6.4.
Okay, so 20
salary range,
20,
you can upgrade to Williams.
Yeah. So, I was just gonna say dump Albon, which I think, based off the math you're saying, that would get him or her into Hamilton.
I also drop Russell. So that was the math I was doing. You could drop Russell and Albon and free up way more of your budget, and basically, because you have a decent amount of budget here with 56 million for 2 drivers, 1 team. You already have Max. You could drop Russell, Albon, and go like Leclerc, Norris, Kick, and then a talent driver, but you to replace Albon.
Who? How much? What's the?
I went on the side quest of your guys' math, so I had to abandon my math. But
I'm a little lost.
Well, I think he could run. I think they could run. Sorry. Russell's
gonna be pretty punitive drop fee. I mean, it's gonna be almost 800,000.
Yeah, but
after losing,
I'm swinging for the fences on these ones today. I don't know why.
Well, I don't think this. If he's up by 300 points, I don't think he needs to swing for the fence. I would just play it safe.
Yeah,
like
honestly,
like Hulkenberg and just make him talent.
Yeah, I'm doing that. I'm not dropping Russell. I'm going to let Russell roll off, and then I'm going to be able to sign. I'm probably going to take Sauber for 1 race, and then for Vegas, I take like a Ferrari sort of constructor for that non-sprint weekends.
Yeah, if it's me, I'm dropping Albon to get the money to get Hamilton.
Yeah, a 300-point buffer at this point in the season is basically just put together average weeks and you should be fine.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, and then I would also say just don't put all your eggs in one team's basket so that a double retirement doesn't just tank your first place. because that's what we're fading at this point. We're fading a double retirement, like, and we have all of the drivers and the constructor, and that's dangerous.
Derek, I have 16.1 million, 2 drivers open. Leclerc locked. Team has Norris, Hulk, and Lawson. Who should I pick? Eileen Sainz, but then I only have budget for Perez and lower. Anyone worth dropping? We don't know who his constructor is, though.
Also, he says he has 16.1 million. So I think he has a typo there, right? Wouldn't he need to have like 36.1 million to do that? Because then if he's saying he has budget for Sainz and Perez.
All right, Derek, if you're listening, we need clarity.
Yeah.
We'll come back to your question. Andrew, if Oscar gets back on form, Max's car is a 5th fastest. Okay. I have 4 blue chips: Max, Lando, Charles, and George. That's a great lineup for 2 to 3 more races. Who should I release so they're not locked out at the end of the season?
Here's the first question I'll ask. Is it important that you have somebody available for Abu Dhabi in particular? Because so with 4 races left, if you had somebody like 2 races ago, they're going to have to be out 1 week. It's a question of which week. So I'm not necessarily looking to have like all hands on deck for the last race of the year. I am looking to see who's going to be out at what might be their worst track of the year. So like if I don't like Red Bull on a street course, then and I have to have Max out, then I want him out for Vegas because that's a street course, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily want to, or if there's an engine penalty, like then I want Max out. Like if we find out that if he's going to make an engine change. That aside, like I want my blue chips. Actually, I would say Abu Dhabi might be one of the less important races of the 4 left. Like Vegas and Abu Dhabi are less important because those are not sprints. Brazil and Qatar are sprints. And so I want all of my blue chips available for those sprint races where the drivers are going to be scoring those extra points. But that aside, like I actually don't necessarily care if I don't have somebody available for Abu Dhabi as long as I can field a competitive lineup. I just don't want a scenario where everybody's out 1 week.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
So I'm not going out of my way to release somebody so that they're available for Abu Dhabi, is my answer.
Andrew Rushnet says his toddler could outrace Logan. I just wanted to.
And Logan could out-qualify Perez. So what does that say about Perez?
Truth.
Maybe that's why I love Perez talent driver. I'm addicted to these horrible drivers.
Blossom says, I have Verstappen for 1 more race, 105 million left for 4 drivers and a constructor. This is a full lineup question. We'll come back to this if we have time. First in my league, I have 43.3 million for 2 drivers. Oops. My current roster is Leclerc, Norris, Colapinto, Williams. I'm locked out of Verstappen and Tsunoda. Take Piastri and Perez for 1 race. Definitely not Perez. I'm not
Perez.
I'm not betting on him.
I'd rather have give me Sainz and then like anybody cheaper than Perez.
Sainz and
Sainz and Alonso. Sainz and Alonso would fit.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think again. He's
Sainz
first in his league. First in his league, so you got to think about consistency. You just have to maintain your advantage, and I'd be avoiding anybody who has high beta, who's like super volatile, which at this point is Perez. Perez is not even. I would actually argue he's not volatile. He's not even as volatile as a stroller coaster. He's just been losing.
He's just bad.
Yeah, he's just not good. So he's checked out. I think that he's wants to retire or something. I don't know what's going on, but I agree with William. I'd be taking Piastri and Alonso. Alonso needs 2 great events, two really good events to go back out of talent territory. So like you're probably safe with him. Wait, is that 17.2? Yeah, so you could have him talent driver for 2 more events. That's my take.
I don't agree. This person's first in their league. We don't know by how many points, but this is a time you could afford to take a risk. You could afford Sainz and Perez and run Perez as your talent driver.
I disagree.
This is the same person who's ready to say that the drivers' championship is 50-50. So
I'm just gonna throw something out there.
I'm with
I
Mike
think,
here.
I think
No.
I'm ahead of all of you guys on the global leaderboard by like hundreds of positions.
That is true, but
Someone should take my advice.
but on my secret team, I'm beating you.
Yeah. My secret team is not secret. I'm 7th in the official GridRival league, 149th globally. And on our league, I'm still in the top 200 globally. I'm very close between the two of them.
Well, enjoy it while it lasts if you're going to play Perez.
I'm just saying that math works out perfectly. You could run Sainz and Perez, do Perez for a 1 race contract talent driver. If you're in the lead by like 200 points, I would very much consider that wild card, because if it works, it'll work out and you'll make that lead even bigger. Then you could like dunk on all of your league mates being like, I beat you with Perez talent driver.
Yeah.
Like,
and then they dunk on you if Checo crashes, which
no, you're already winning. You can't lose. You're in first place.
I'm officially calling it. It's Tuesday, and I do not care what practice looks like. I will be running Perez as my talent driver. It's guaranteed. I will not back out of it unless he like crashes in practice and won't be available.
The chat's quiet, but we're not quiet. We're not getting pushback on these wild suggestions. Like,
yeah, we only got 9 minutes left, so we're not actually going to get to everything. I'm trying to find one that is kind of something you haven't answered, so I apologize if we skip you. Keith says I have 40 million for one driver and a constructor, locked out of Sainz and RB, Norris, Verstappen, Colapinto, Lawson. I was thinking about dropping Max to pick up Leclerc, Hamilton, and Williams.
Who is this?
Keith Forsyth.
I'm for it.
Dropping Max.
So,
my immediate gut was I wouldn't be dropping Max, but if he's saying he can pick up Leclerc,
if
Hamilton,
you need a
Williams.
driver and a constructor, why not just Leclerc and Sauber? That's my first thought. I take Leclerc and I take Sauber.
Ryan, Michael, anything to add to that?
No, I would take that as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Luca, I have 12.8 and have Piastri, Hamilton, K-Mag, and Yuki, and Aston Martin. Need another driver locked out of Colapinto. You basically can only take like Lawson or Stroll then at that point with 12.8, not without leaving too much on the table.
Probably Lawson.
Yeah. The only other move I would consider making is dropping Aston Martin for Kick to just free up budget to then go higher on the driver. But I haven't done that math off the top of my head of what that gets you. But that should get you a decent chunk of money, because Aston's 15.2. So you're going to get like almost 9 out of that. Then that gives you what you had. That puts you in at Hulkenberg territory. You can get Hulkenberg at that point. You're still leaving something on the table though, but not much.
I think there's a good question here. Lucas says, I'm heavily betting on Ferrari. He's got Carlos, Charles, Lando, K-Mag, and Ferrari. Lots of Ferrari exposure. Do you think this lack of hedging is a problem with current Ferrari race points? I think Ferrari is a team definitely to be hedging on, but again, I think a lot of our answers are going to come down to your specific circumstances. Where are you at in your league? How many, what are you trying to accomplish? Definitely. I mean, it is a high risk move, but, and I say that meaning not necessarily Ferrari, but when you're putting all your eggs in that basket, if Ferrari has a really rough weekend, it can be very, very punitive. But if you're in first place by 500 points, I think it's probably a fine strategy. I don't know if you guys have any other opinions. I mean, Ferrari's a good team to be betting on right now.
Like if they don't get it right with the setup, or like they have trouble getting the tires to behave and they're the third fastest car, you're going to suffer. If you have a retirement, that's 1.5 retirements if you have the driver and the constructor. So there's a little downside there. It's 2024. Thankfully, the cars are way more reliable than they used to be. So I'm not scared. I'm not scared of that these days. A number of years ago, I would have been scared that you could have a bad batch of parts and you have a double retirement that way. That's not really a thing anymore.
And
But
it's also
yeah.
oh, God. It's also tough on a sprint weekend. You have so much, just less data, one practice session, and then you're locked out. So it's not like you get to see cars on track for 3 different sessions and figure out how Ferrari's pace looks.
And you have to figure out what programs people are on in that one practice session.
Yeah.
Remember, Friday lockdown. We lock at sprint qualifying on Friday.
That's right. Good reminder.
I will say, quick shout out, Fabio. He said he was about to bet on me suggesting Perez talent driver. So I don't know what that says about me that people are like, that guy's going to be the one that says Perez talent driver, but I'll take it. Well,
you
as
and
a
Mike
compliment.
GP are both in crazy land.
I made it that suggestion for one lineup. I'm not saying that as a global recommendation. I'm saying that person is prime for a Perez talent driver.
This is my global recommendation. Everybody should do it.
Oh dear. Okay, 5 minutes left. Michael Toaster Boy. I like this situation. He's got Norris, Max, Carlos, Piastri, and Lawson. It's a hell of a team. Open constructor, he's got 13.6. Sprint, so do I upgrade Lawson and take kick this week? I would say absolutely. The question is, Mike, can you do the math on this? 13.6. If he releases Lawson currently at 9.8, the minus the what would his fee be here?
His fee would be $294.
294. What does that leave him with? Can he get up to?
Can you get to 16.9? That is the number.
Can you get to 15.7 and get Alonso?
Yes. Well, he can go if that quick math was 23-1. Is that right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So you go all the way up to Hulkenberg. That's definitely the move I would make with sprint weekends coming up. Lots of good options in there for talent. I mean, I think Alonso to me is a standout. You have a rain race potentially this weekend. I mean, the dude's locked in 2 of his championships there. I think there's like he's clearly undervalued with the last week. You could have him for 2 weeks. The predicament you could put yourself in is if all those contracts are long, and you lock him until the end of the season, you could put yourself in a spot where you don't have a talent driver unless you drop a team, but kind of depends on the contract lengths of Norris, Max, Carlos, and Oscar. I have to imagine one of those is going to be dropping off in the next 2 races, but that's one thing I would consider. Ryan, were you going to say something?
Do you guys think Alonso finishes ahead of Perez this weekend?
Yeah, I think everyone does.
Yeah.
It's a good chance of that.
I don't think it's even a remote possibility.
Really?
You think Alonso
did you watch last weekend? Have you been watching Formula One, Ryan?
Well, I mean, he could have a mechanical problem like last week.
I think if let's say, I mean, obviously it all goes out the window if one of them doesn't have a clean race, but I think Perez is going to finish at least 2 to 3 positions minimum ahead of Alonso this weekend.
Perez didn't get out of Q1 last week.
Yeah, bro. Dude, this is Perez's salary chart for the season.
He's a great price. He's on sale.
Look at this,
He's talent driver eligible.
He's on clearance. He's being liquidated.
This is not clearance. This is bankruptcy.
Okay,
this is full on Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Yeah, man. Like,
I guess I'm just going down with the ship then. I don't know.
I will concede
it's been an honor.
I will concede that perhaps he may be close to a salary floor average. Is he going to beat Alonso, 2-time world champion?
Yes.
In Brazil, in the rain? I don't know. What odds would you take on that if you're betting a lot of your money?
The Perez will finish ahead of Alonso?
Yeah, at this event.
At a coin, at even, I would bet
no, not
outrageous sums of money.
No. What odds would you set? Like, what spread would you put on those two?
I mean, I'll say Perez will finish 3 positions ahead of Alonso.
Interesting. Okay.
I'll be shocked if it's close.
Well, we have that recorded, so we can revisit that next week. And let's see where we got 1 minute left. Any of these questions stand out to you? Perez and Hulk?
Piastri Tsunoda is better than Perez and Hulk. I think.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'll go with that.
And Derek questioning how good Alonso's car is. Yeah, his car is not great. Like, I do think Alonso's outperforming that equipment. And we're
Mhm.
seeing that with Haas putting up the results that they're putting up. That
Yep.
said, I mean, Perez is massively underperforming his equipment.
Correct. That has been a consistent problem, as you've seen by the massive decline in his value from literally the first race of the season.
It's a shame
With
we have to
that,
wait 3 weeks for Vegas.
Yeah.
we are out of time. We are out of time for today's show. We hope that it was helpful for all of you watching, and we look forward to seeing you for the next race. Enjoy the weekend. We hope it's an exciting one, and we look forward to seeing everybody back here soon. Thanks so much. And we're done.